Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Nick Hodges here with a Partner Spotlight. We'll be looking particularly at the command pattern in my Partner Spotlight. The reason we're doing that is because the command pattern is a chapter in my new book, More Coding in Delphi. This book is available to all Seattle owners in a soft copy form. You can download it on the Embarcadero website, but if you're more inclined to a paperback copy, you can get them at CreateSpace or Amazon. And the way to find out more is to go to www.morecodingindelphi.com. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the command pattern. The command pattern is one of the chapters in my book. I have a number of chapters on patterns, including the adapter pattern, the observer pattern, and others, but we're going to talk about the command pattern today. And the command pattern purpose is to encapsulate method invocation. And by encapsulate method invocation, I mean put method invocation in a class so that you can separate each type of method invocation into its own class, making it more testable, more decoupled, and just generally better code. This will allow you to do a few things, like for instance in queue and dequeue functionality. You might have a thread or series of threads that create events, and then you can put those events in a queue and execute them in order. It allows for undo and redo. You can remember commands that take place and undo them in the reverse order that they were done. We'll show a demo that does that. It allows you to follow the single responsibility principle. It allows you to put each command or each type of invocation, method invocation, into its own class. That class has a single responsibility. It doesn't do anything else other than the one thing you've told it to do, and thus we follow the single responsibility principle. And finally, it allows you to separate your concerns, and that's always something you want to do when you write good, clean code. You always want to separate your concerns to make them more testable and more maintainable. I'll be showing 4 demos today. The first one will be a simple command encapsulation example. It just shows you a simple simulation of an auto key fob that has 3 buttons on it. We'll show an undo example, how you can remember the commands that you executed and then undo them if you so desire. We'll look at queuing and dequeuing code and functionality. And finally, we'll look at how you can change commands at runtime, enabling you to alter the functionality of your application very simply and easily and cleanly. So now it's time to look at the code. Okay, in this first demo, we're going to look at a simple auto key fob, or at least a simulation of one. An auto key fob is one of those little things that you get with your car that opens and closes the doors, or unlocks and unlocks the doors. And many of them have a sort of an emergency button on them. Some of them can do start your car, that kind of thing. But we'll have one with 3 simple buttons. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to define a command. We're going to define the functionality of a command via an interface. And it's very, very simple, as you can see. We're simply going to create an interface with a method called execute. And that execute is going to get executed when you press the button on your key fob, on your car's key fob. Now, in order to make that interface useful, we need to implement something for it. So I've implemented 2 groups of key fob functionalities, one of which is for using a local radio, i.e. a little transmitter inside the fob itself. But my car also has the ability to use a satellite radio to unlock the car. I can unlock the car with my phone, actually. And my phone can act as a key fob, and it talks to, I guess, satellite, I don't know, and unlocks my car remotely. And so basically we have 2 different sets of commands that we can attach to the notion of our key fob. And the key fob simply has 3 methods on it that press the lock, the unlock, and the emergency button. And we create it by passing in 3 commands to the constructor using constructor injection. Very nice. And then all we do, of course, is we create a key fob passing in the 3 different commands. We execute those commands, and then we free the key fob. And we do that both with the local car locker set of classes and the T-satellite car set of classes. And as you can see, The constructor simply stores away the I commands, I simple commands, and it calls execute whenever we press each of the individual buttons, and that's all that happens. If we run this, you should see that the car indeed is locked, unlocked, and the car honks, and then the satellite transmitter does the work in the second set. Now, you might ask yourself, that's a pretty complicated way of making something very simple happen. Why couldn't I just do it with a simple set of buttons and an on-click event handlers and whatnot? Well, that would result in coupled code. What we have here, if you'll notice, is a dependency on simply the I command interface, right? These classes depend, the auto key Fob class depends on nothing more than the interfaces here, and we pass in instances of those interfaces, and the class itself doesn't know anything at all about what its events it's doing. It just knows that we've attached an emergency button to emergency horn, emergency unlock, or sorry, the unlock button to the A unlocker, and the F lock button to the A locker classes, or in this case interfaces. And so our code is decoupled. These auto fob classes are very easy to test. They're decoupled, separated out, and they follow the single responsibility principle. That's exactly what you want your code to look like, and here we've used the command pattern to enable your code to be testable, maintainable, and decoupled. In our second demo, we're going to define our interface a little differently. This time we're going to not only have an execute method, but also an undo method. And we're going to write a simple program that's going to remember each of the commands that we execute in a stack, and then if we want to, we can pop those items off the stack and undo them. So here, let me run the demo just to show you how it works. We can click, and everywhere we click, we get a little red dot, and as we push the undo button, the little red dots are undone. So how does this take place? Well, first of all, we have a point placer command which does the work in its execute of actually executing and drawing the point on the canvas, on the paint box, with a circle diameter that we've determined, just using the regular old canvas commands. It takes a canvas and a point as a constructor parameters, using constructor injection, of course, and we can undo it as well by simply painting an ellipse over that point that we remembered and stored inside the command of the original color of the paint box. So this happens like so. We have a button that clears all of them. Well, let me back up. There's a stack of dots that we have that are made up of a stack of I-point commands, and we push each button click onto the stack, and then when we undo, here we undo, we pop them off, and we call undo on that method. So we push here in the paintbox mouse up event. We create the command, we execute it, we push it onto the stack, and we update the label so that we know how many items have been put into the stack. Whenever we want to paint, we need to be able to paint in the on-paint event of the paint box. We go iterate over the I-point commands inside the F-dots collection, or I'm sorry, stack, and we just execute. And remember, the execute command draws the items onto the paint box. The form create simply creates a stack of I-point commands to maintain, and thus we're maintain a list of commands that go into the stack and get pushed down on the stack as we click the mouse in a specific order, and then we can undo those commands, each one, by calling its undo method. It knows how to both draw itself and undo itself by simply maintaining a list of commands. And again, we're maintaining a list of iPoint commands, thus enabling us to decouple the point command itself from the main unit, making this command testable in theory, and decoupled from the notion of painting and drawing. You'll notice that the main application itself doesn't really do any painting and drawing. It simply keeps track of T-point placer commands inside of a stack. And that's all it does, is push and pop those items onto and off of the stack, enabling us to, again, encapsulate the command functionality, keep track of it in the stack, and do it and undo it as needed. Our third demo is a simple one, but illustrates an important point: the ability to queue up commands for execution later. So here again, we create a simple IQ command that has an execute procedure, but this time it takes a memo as its parameter. We implement it using the TQ command. We pass in a ID as an integer into the constructor. We execute it, passing in a memo that it's going to write out to, and we keep that property, the ID property, available for use in a little minute later, and you'll see how that works here in just a sec. So basically our form looks like this. We have a timer, and in the on-click event of the timer, if the count of the command queue, by the way, and here's the queue, we have a IQ of IQ command. If the count is less than 10, then we create a new command, increment the counter so we know how many commands we have, enqueue it, and change the caption telling you how many commands there are in the command queue. Then there's a button that we can push at any time we want to pull an item from the queue, and that says as long as the count's greater than 0, dequeue the item from the command queue, execute it using memo 1, and then change the caption to indicate the change in the number of items in the queue. Now, the execute functionality occurs here, and all it does is write out what command number its ID is to the memo that we've passed in. Very simple functionality, but if we run it, you can see that the commands are slowly building up, and if I want to, I can pull them off and get it down to 0, and they'll still keep coming in, and I can pop them off the queue at my convenience whenever I need to, whenever I maybe have available CPU functionality or CPU time or whatever, and they will continue to pop off the queue. They will continue to come in, and we've got the ability to queue them up and execute them in a manner that we desire. And you can see how this might work with, say, a TCP/IP connection, where commands come in at various unpredictable intervals, and you can queue them up and execute them in an as-needed basis in a controlled manner that you determine. And in this final demo, we'll see how we can dynamically change the command functionality of a button by using the command pattern. And again, I'm declaring a interface. I call it this time the iChange command, and again it has a simple execute procedure that takes a memo, which we're going to use to output information just to prove that things are happening. And again, a very simple interface. We implement it in a number of different ways, and this time I must have about 6 or 8 here of commands that just simply do simple little things that output to the memo, like yell and shout and squeak and bark and brag and compliment and whatnot. Let me run the thing just to show you what happens. Here you can see that if I select squeak, it squeaks. If I select compliment, it compliments you. If I select shout, it yells at you. And I can even add more commands. As you notice, more popped in there. And I can add more functionality to the list at runtime. And this all occurs inside the confines of the command pattern, which I will show you here now. So we've got the interface, we've got the implementations of that interface in a number of different patterns. And what I do is I register these commands in a command registry. It maintains a dictionary by name for each individual change command. You can call register command with a name and an instance of command. You can get a command by name, and you can get the complete list of names out of the command registry anytime you want. And this is all normal functionality that you'd expect. It simply uses a T dictionary to maintain that information, doesn't let you pass in blank or nil instances of change command, all that fun stuff. Here's the interesting part where, of course, right here where you get the command out of the registry, you get the list of names here, and you register a command by just adding that into the dictionary itself. The way this works is you have the main form, which adds more commands when you ask it to. Remember at design time or runtime we added more commands, and it added these 3 commands at runtime. When we push the button, it calls whatever the changing command is assigned to and calls its execute method, passing in the memo. Remember, it just calls its execute method, which is the single method on the change command interface. Button 2, that adds more commands, fills up the list box, and disables the button so you don't add them again. Here again, fill the list box calls the get names functionality and puts each individual name into the list box. On form create, we fill up the list box, and here's where the real work gets done. We click and select the list box, and when we do that, we grab the name out of the list box of the item, and we change the command that gets called by calling get command out of the command registry and assigns it to the changing command. And if nothing gets selected, then we set it to nil. A changing command is a variable on the form, private variable on the form, that is of type change command. And as you can see, it's very easy to select the right command out of the list of commands, out of the registry, and assign it to changing command, so that when we press the button, changing command gets executed. Very, very simple process of dynamically changing what happens inside your application when you select something in the list box. We'll take a look again. And again, you might ask yourself, well, I can do that with dynamic event handlers, and you could, but then you've tied yourself to the form and you've coupled your code to the form, and we don't want to do that. We want to have separate individual single responsibility commands that execute on demand and that can be changed at runtime. These classes can be easily tested and separated away from your main program, such that again, our main form doesn't really know anything about what these commands do. It just knows how to execute them when they're called by name. And again, this is the command pattern in action, enabling us to separate out our concerns, to dynamically change functionality on the fly, to queue and dequeue items, and to make sure that our classes are decoupled and testable. Command pattern is a powerful means of ensuring that your code is clean, easy to maintain, and testable, and that's why you should consider using it in your next project. And that brings us to the end of our demonstration, and now it's time for questions.
If I want to have an open command registry crossing process boundaries so that third parties will be able to add commands without the need to recompile your application, I would need to combine that pattern with a plugin framework. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. You put the commands in a package and then somehow dynamically load those packages and call the classes references out of that. that would work very well. Certainly no reason why you couldn't add extra classes via packaging.
Nick, will you talk about MVVM pattern next Spotlight?
Well, the next Spotlight's already scheduled to be aspect-oriented programming. And I should write a blog post about MVVM. I tried to do it in my book, and it's just not quite doable yet in a way that makes me happy. So maybe I'll write a blog post about MVVM and the sort of just the minor little details that need to take place. But you can do MVVM in Delphi. You just can't do it in the automagic super duper way that you can with some of the other frameworks. So I'll talk about that, and that it doesn't quite exist yet in the Delphi framework world. But MVVM is really cool, and that's probably the way that we should be doing things. So hopefully the Delphi community will come up with a way to do it the quote right way, unquote.
Yeah, and I put up on the screen just a reminder to everybody, in 2 weeks, Nick has a week off. We've got Nick on September 24th, Thursday, on the Partner Spotlight with aspect-oriented programming. That'll be very cool. And just a reminder to everybody, Code Rage 10 is coming up in the middle of October 13th through 15th. So we'll see lots of people presenting and all of you to have conversations with us during the middle of October. Let's see, Pat is saying a great presentation, interesting things to wrap one's head around, a slightly different paradigm, always good to stretch my gray matter.
Well, thank you. I hope I did that.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful technique. We use it here at Gateway because we have a point of sale, and the point of sale is configurable, so the different buttons have different commands that are associated with it, and we use that very effectively. It's a very powerful technique.
Here's a suggestion. How about a series of webinars featuring Nick?
I'd be happy to serve in any way that I can, David.
Okay. I know that you have a real job and a real family and all of that too, but we will for everyone. We're working on both. Jim McKeith and I are working on the schedule for Q4 for both the developer skill sprints and the partner spotlights. We probably won't start until the beginning of November, just because we're doing some traveling in October, and we have the big Code Rage 3 days. That's let's see, 3 times. It's like 42 sessions each day. 42 sessions in each track, Pascal and C++. So that's like 42 weeks of skill sprints, for example.
There you go.
All in 3 days. So.
And those are longer than skill sprint. Those are 45-minute sessions.
Yeah,
is that right?
30-minute 30 to 40-minute presentation plus Q&A. Yeah. Let's see. Which editor font did you use in the presentation?
Oh gosh, I think
I
Courier New.
Oh, I use Lucida Console 12 or 14, depending on if I'm in a big room. 14 or 16 point. Lucida Console looks pretty nice, but Courier New looks great as well. Yeah.
Courier New is the classic font, so I kind of stick with that. I'm an old school guy.
Well, I'm even older school, but that's a different let's see. Let's see. They want you to do a session featuring T-Smiley and T-HTML writer, but that was with a smiley.
I can do that. I could do that for sure, no problem. There's a chapter in More Coding in Delphi on T-Smiley and sort of how it came about and how it's designed and stuff. So if you want to find out more about T-Smiley, you can get a upgrade to Seattle and get a free copy, or you can buy a paperback as well.
Yeah. Let's see. Any tips on graphical visualization on more complex MVVM models with threads? Wow.
Wow.
It's a big topic. Yeah.
Big topic. I don't have any tips. No. I guess I just would say avoid trying to thread your UI. That's fraught with peril. But other than that, I don't have much. No, sorry.
Yeah, here's more of a comment. Would be interesting to see patterns used in a real project or component.
Sure, yeah. It's a little hard to do that in 20-minute demo, but I think you could. My desire is to always kind of try and show simple demos that illustrate the point, and then help you draw a connection between how you can use it in your real-world apps.
Let's see. Has your book been updated in 2015? I'm not sure if they're asking about coding in Delphi, because more coding in Delphi is new here.
Yes, more coding in Delphi has not been updated. That's something I should perhaps think about doing. But more coding in Delphi is new, and that's what I've been focusing most of my attention on over the last year.
Let's see. Dustin says, Nick, you're an awesome man. Never thought I'd become a fan of a programmer, but here we are. Thanks for bringing this stuff to the Delphi world.
You're very welcome. I'm glad it's helpful.
I think, Nick, I'm probably your #1 fan. I mean, I met you, and it's mentioned in the foreword that I wrote. Way back in the Turbo Pascal days.
At least 20 years ago.
Yeah. Nick was at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, and, those that know me, I travel all over the world. I get on airplanes, sit in little narrow seats for 10, 12, 13 hours or more. But, boy, when I can drive from Santa Cruz, where I live, down to Monterey to give a presentation at a computer club, I'm there, and that's how I first met Nick Hodges.
Yep.
many moons ago, 20 years ago.
That was at least 20 years ago, yeah. It was probably in 1994. It was before Delphi was out, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. That was, I think we were doing probably Borland Pascal at that time.
Yeah.
Probably BP7, Turbo Pascal 7. Okay, so Ilya's asking, does following these patterns make it easier to write stable multi-threaded code? Is command pattern already multi-threaded safe by design?
The answer to the first question is it does make it easier to write multi-threaded code, mainly because your classes are completely decoupled, and you can use them in a multi-threaded way, but the command pattern itself is not necessarily thread safe. Threading is a topic I cover in more coding in Delphi, and one of the things I say is don't over control your threads. A thread should be a small, discrete chunk of code that needs to execute in parallel with other code. And making things multi-threaded is always challenging. So I would not want to tell you that the command pattern or any code that I showed you today was thread safe. How about that?
Okay. And don't use application.process messages.
Do not.
Yeah, do not. Do not. That's right. Do not. Or never. Let's see. How can I get the sources of the examples provided?
They will be on Bitbucket. I will put in my blog a link to the sources. I should have put that in the presentation. I failed to do that at the end there. But they're on Bitbucket. The project is called Nick Demo Code, all one word, and you can find all kinds of stuff there. But I'll put a blog post pointing that out so that people can see it.
Okay, let's see. So if I go to GitHub, this part is live. So if I go to GitHub,
Bitbucket.
I'm sorry. I typed, it was because Pavel on Tuesday put his code in GitHub, and I typed. It was funny because I said, Nick will blog with Bitbucket link. Nick demo code is the project name. Search GitHub. This is really ridiculous. The lack of sleep, I'm sure, and too much fun. Bucket.
If you just type Nick demo code into Google, it'll probably pop up. But
try that. Let's try something simple. Nick Hodges demo code Bitbucket. Paste the link. Here we go. Nick demo code Bucket. First hit. The first. Okay, so
If it's not there as part of the More Coding in Delphi link, which you can drill down into, I'll make sure it's put there for Partner Spotlight as well. Hit source.
Oh, sorry, source.
And then
there's More Coding in Delphi.
Delphi patterns, command, and there it is.
There you go.
Although that final demo that I did isn't in there, I'll put that in there.
Okay.
And all good software developers need to know how to use source code. So you need to be able to pull my demo using, I think this is a Git. No, it's a Mercurial. I'm pretty sure it's Mercurial.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Nick, would you want to continue or participate in Martin Harvey's multi-threaded the Delphi way, part 2?
That's a tall order. That's a fine piece of work that Martin Harvey did. I don't know if there's anything to add to it, but it's definitely worth a read. I certainly use it as a resource for my book. I could look into it. That'd be a project to work on. It's a good idea.
And the link there is in the Q&A log. Let's see here. Nick, are you going to continue your effort on Bitbucket to cover RTL VCL with tests?
Oh, now that I'm done with the book, I thought I'd get back at that. I have a project out there that is like write tests for the RTL Delphi, write unit tests, and yeah, I could work on that. I had thought about doing that after the book was done, but I haven't thought about it recently, so yeah, I'll put some more work into that. That's a good project. Hopefully I can get you guys to run the tests.
Okay. I'll go over to Tom and say, put these in the smoke tests.
There you go.
Good, Calvin. Let's see. Spring unit in the uses of the last example, a few words, question mark?
Oh, the Spring unit is from Spring for Delphi, and then you can find that at spring4d.org. Spring, F-O-R-D. Oh, wait, is it F-O-U-R or spring4d.org? And there it is. Thank you, David. And it is the collections unit I was using. I like to use the unit, the spring.collections unit, and I think I was using that to hold a list, the dictionary for the registry. So yeah, highly recommend it. If you're not familiar with Spring for D, my books talk about it quite extensively, and I totally recommend you start looking at the Spring for Delphi framework, because there's a lot of goodness in there.
Every time you present, I have to say this, it is clear, it is simple, there's source code, and I'm not the only one. Other people are saying great things as well.
You're too kind.
But I should put in the chat window for everybody the source code. Let me go back to the right Nick Hodges demo code. So I'll put that in the chat window. Let me bring it up. It's on Bitbucket.
Yeah. Thanks for pointing out that. I should have added that to the video, but
I can put it. I'll do a blog post, but you can also do a blog post or whatever you want. But when I do when I put up the replays and the Tech Partner Spotlights, I do a blog post with a whole bunch of links that I'm bringing up. But yeah, the Bitbucket. I can also lay the Bitbucket source code over the video, so don't worry about it. Don't do anything special. I can just put a Camtasia text overlay. And
that sounds great. Thank you.
On the Q&A page. Let's see, what else is up here? Used a collection from the Spring 4D project. I saw that.
Use the dictionary, iDictionary, yeah.
So I put that in the link. Here's the book, More Coding in Delphi. So everyone, those are showing up in the chat window should be clickable links. And the original book, Coding in Delphi. And just a reminder again that you upgrade to Grad Studio 10 Seattle, Delphi 10 Seattle, you can have the ebook version of More Coding in Delphi, but really get the hard copy. You want to take that, sit at the park, sit at the beach, sit on the bus, sit on the train, sit at the dinner table.
There you go. I completely agree. The soft copy is nice, but the paperback is the way to go.
Yep. and the other thing is we have Nick in 2 weeks covering aspect-oriented programming, another chapter from his book on the 24th. So you're already there on the series. So let's see. People are putting a couple things in. Good presentation. I'll have to watch it a few more times to get the whole picture. Absolutely. And Neville, get the book. Get the ebook. Get the paper book.
There you go. Yeah, get the ebook. You can read all about it.
And Daniel says, how does this model in a complex UI, something like configuration or setup screen? Or how does it hold up, he's saying?
Well, it'll hold up to anything you can throw at it. I mean, it's just a pattern, so it'll scale as well as you need it to. I don't know about a configuration screen. A good example I talked about earlier today was here at Gateway we have a point of sale system that's sort of the heart of our product, and it's a perfect pattern for a point of sale system, allowing people to move and drop buttons and control the point of sale screen and what each individual button does on the touch screen or with a mouse or whatever, using the command pattern. So that's another example of how it might work.
Yeah, I'm sort of reminded about what we did with actions originally, going back, Delphi?
Yeah, actions are an instance of command pattern. I mean, it's a perfect example.
Yep.
And certainly I'd always recommend using actions as opposed to doing direct on-click programming. Always put your event handlers in actions and attach those to clicks and whatnot.
And then Daniel was coming back. I mean, can you really reach 100% separation?
Well, if you reach 100% separation, then of course nothing's connected. So I guess you can't reach 100% separation, but you can reach a point where you are linking together things by nothing other than an interface, which of course is a very, very thin connection between between two layers. So 100% no, but 90%, 99% yes. How about that?
Yeah, that's the other part. I mean, once we added interfaces into the language, that goes back to Delphi 3, and it had the COM-based connection, so we could do simplified COM registration, reference counting, releasing, and then we decoupled COM from the whole thing, and interfaces became this great, wonderful language construct. One of my favorites, all-time favorites. I'm sure everybody else has their other favorites, but interfaces were always it for me.
Oh yeah, that's probably the number one tool. If developers want to take their code to the next level and they're not using interfaces, I'd say that's the number one thing to do, is to start coding against interfaces instead of implementations.
Yep. Yeah. No, I remember we couldn't wait till it was decoupled from COM so that we could use it for everything. It was like, remove the COM dependency. Thank you. I mean, we were only on Windows at that time, but I knew the times would come as well. But still, we got that. I got that dream. I always kind of joke that I've got this sort of laundry list of things that I hope to see before I retire or pass on to the next big thing in this universe somewhere, but they keep putting some things in. Sometimes it takes a little longer, but I just wanted to remind everybody, not only is Nick coming back in 2 weeks for the Tech Partner Spotlight, that somebody mentioned earlier that this was also like a developer skill sprint, which it was. Nick's done other skill sprints. I'm going to link the replays onto both pages, the Partner Spotlight page and the skill sprint page. But Nick is a book author, so he is a technology partner in the sense of being a book author, so it fits nicely here. Just want to mention we're doing a deep dive course for Asia Pac. Ooh, that would be tough. It'd be 1 o'clock in the morning or something like that if you're over there in Australia, New Zealand, but we'll have replays for this one. We're doing another one of our Saturday deep dives for Rad Studio 10 Seattle. And then we have Code Rage. That'll start early in the morning, so you can catch that late at night or catch the replays middle of October. So Code Rage 10, Code Rage X, October 13th to 15th. And again, back here, more coding in Delphi. Get the book, read it, get both of them. Is there a special if you buy two? No. The bundle?
I've thought about that. I need to look into doing that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what CreateSpace or Amazon might do, but get both, and then buy some for your coworkers as well and your friends.
Yes, by all your friends. Yeah.
And then when we get closer to holiday time, then buy them as gifts for whatever holidays you celebrate. But that's enough of all of that. Nick, again, a pleasure to spend these times with you, and I know for the attendees all 3 times, it's great to have you as well.
Sure, I appreciate it very much. Thank you, everyone.